buckle up, because today we are taking a deep dive into the latest SpaceX Starship launch.
A significant one for sure.
Yeah, this wasn't just some run-of-the-mill rocket launch. This was a major move for reusable rockets.
It really does kind of put the space in pace setter. The second full test flight for Starship really pushes boundaries in ways we haven't seen before.
Okay, for those of us watching from down here on Earth, what does full test flight even mean?
Well, it means SpaceX is getting closer to that ultimate goal of reusability with Starship. Think about it like a test drive around the block versus a cross-country road trip.
Yeah.
This launch let them really put every system to the test, from liftoff to landing, with the goal of making it safe for a crewed mission down the line.
So this is about more than just getting it up there, right? It has to come back in one piece and be ready to go again.
Exactly. Imagine if we threw away airplanes after every single flight.
Oh man, talk about expensive airfare.
Yeah, reusability is the key to making space travel more affordable and sustainable over the long term.
That makes sense, yeah. So walk us through this launch. I mean, we saw those incredible images of the Super Heavy booster landing back on the launch pad. It was like something out of a movie.
Yeah, it's really where things get interesting. That whole maneuver with the robotic arms catching the booster in midair, that's Mechazilla. It's about as impressive as it sounds.
I mean, seriously, catching a giant rocket with the giant robot arm, it sounds pretty wild.
And yet they did it. After boosting Starship high into the atmosphere, Super Heavy turned around and came back for this pinpoint landing, all guided by those massive robotic arms.
Wow. I mean, how do they even begin to engineer something like that? What kind of precision are we talking about here?
Imagine threading a needle while riding a roller coaster. That's the kind of accuracy and coordination needed to get that massive booster lined up with the platform while they're both moving. They have to account for wind speed, the booster's momentum, and a million other factors.
And if they get it wrong, even a little bit.
Let's just say the margin for error is very, very slim.
Okay, so Super Heavy is back home safe and sound. What about Starship itself?
Right.
Did it stick the landing too? Well, about that, Starship took a little bit of a dip in the ocean this time
A
around.
planned splashdown, to be precise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. While Starship is designed for those vertical landings like we've seen with Falcon 9, this mission was really about testing its ability to eventually touch down on other planets.
So this was more of a dress rehearsal for landing on a planet with, say, oceans.
Exactly. Think Earth. Or even Mars down the line.
You're talking about Mars. So this is all part of Elon Musk's vision of a multi-planetary human race.
It's a huge part of it, yeah. Reusability is key, of course, but so is being able to land on different types of surfaces.
Wow. I mean, it's just incredible to think that what we're seeing now, these little baby steps, are bringing us closer to a future where humans could actually be living on another planet.
And not just living, but potentially thriving. Musk's vision isn't just about escaping Earth, it's about ensuring humanity's survival in the long run.
Okay, that's a pretty bold vision. But let's be real for a second. It hasn't all been smooth sailing, has it? I mean, we can't talk about Starship without mentioning that, shall we say, explosive landing attempt back in June.
Right, and that highlights a really important part of SpaceX's overall strategy, iterative development. They're constantly pushing those boundaries, learning from both the successes and, yes, the setbacks.
So even that explosion, while not exactly what they were hoping for, provided some valuable data.
Oh, absolutely. They were able to gather information about things like atmospheric reentry, heat shield performance, all crucial stuff that will ultimately help them make Starship even more robust.
It sounds like Musk is okay with taking a few calculated risks if it means pushing the technology forward.
That seems to be the approach, yeah. It's definitely different from what we've seen in the past, but it seems to be working.
I bet this latest test flight, even with the ocean landing, provided a ton of data for the SpaceX team to go over. What's next? Back to the drawing board.
In a way, yes. They'll analyze every single piece of data, figure out what needs improvement, and then it's back to testing, refining, and just continually pushing those boundaries further with each launch.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting for all the space enthusiasts out there. Yeah. When can we realistically expect to see Starship, the real deal, with humans on board, heading for, say, the moon or even Mars? So we've talked about how they're doing it. But what about the when? Is there a timeline for actually putting humans on Starship?
Well, SpaceX is known for being pretty ambitious with their timelines, but even they're not quite ready to give a hard date for crewed Starship flights.
Of course. Still a lot of work to be done. But, let's just say everything goes swimmingly. Starship gets those crewed missions off the ground. What does that future actually look like?
Well, in the near term, we're likely looking at those lunar missions. You know, NASA has already chosen Starship as the lander for their Artemis program, which of course aims to put humans back on the moon.
So we could actually see Starship taking astronauts to the moon in the next few years.
It's definitely a real possibility. And then beyond that, well, that's where things get really interesting. Imagine a future where Starship isn't just going to the moon for a quick visit, but actually establishing a permanent base there.
A lunar base. I mean, that sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
It might sound far-fetched, but it's closer than you might think. A base on the moon could be the perfect stepping stone for exploring even further out into our solar system, making missions to Mars and beyond, well, much more feasible.
Just amazing how quickly things are developing. What seemed impossible just a few short decades ago is now within our grasp. But this isn't just about rockets and timelines and technology, is it? It's really about pushing the boundaries of what's possible as human beings.
Exactly. This latest Starship test, as exciting as it was, is really just one small step in a much longer journey. A journey that makes us think bigger, dream bigger, and really just imagine a future for humanity that extends far beyond our own little planet.
And who knows what we'll discover out there in the vastness of space? Maybe we'll finally get the answer to that age-old question. Are we alone?
Well, that's a question for another deep dive. But it's certainly a thought-provoking note to end on, wouldn't you say?
I think that's a great place to leave it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the latest SpaceX Starship launch.
My pleasure.